Discerning truth in a sea of lies. Live from Kalispell, Montana, it's Critical Disclosure Radio with your host, Jim White.
Okay, I'm your host, James White. This is Critical Disclosure Radio. Thanks so much for joining us here today on this 28th day of March, 2022. And for the next, 6 weeks or so, we're going to be, some of these shows that we have here are going to be co-hosted by my good friend Kirk MacKenzie. He's with us on the screen here now. We also have Bob Phalen and Brad Tschida joining us here. They're on the line as well, and they're Montana legislators, and we're going to have a roundtable discussion as advertised on really on voter integrity, which is, I think, at the forefront of the concerns that we need to have these days when it comes to making sure that the elections are fair and honest, which, there's a lot of question as if they have been lately, and we're going to discuss that and other things today. Kirk, thanks so much for taking time to come here, first of all, and co-host with me on these broadcasts. Oh, wait, let me take you off mute. My bad. Hold on. If you guys go ahead and unmute, if you guys have the button there, let me get you all unmuted. There you go. You got it. Okay, I think I just remuted you. I just remuted someone that went to unmute. There you go, Kirk. Okay, everybody's there. Great.
Hey, Jim, I appreciate this. I think this is going to be kind of fun. I really enjoy this, and I want people to know that, I kind of had the radio show myself, and I kind of achieved what I wanted to do with that. And I really have been watching Jim's show lately, and Jim has been made, Jim and I have been together for more than 10 years, and he has consistently tried to get out the truth, and he's been consistently passionate about doing that and covering the analysis. So, Jim, I'm looking forward to kind of co-hosting this with you, and I think this will be a great program.
Well, thanks so much for the kind words, Kirk, and you've done a tremendous amount of work yourself. We got some feedback going here, fellas. Somebody's got some feedback going on their microphone. We may have to mute. I don't know what's going on here. Maybe it'll die down. Anyway, Kirk, thanks for all your great work. The Constitutional County, you can see all Kirk's great work and everything else he's done with land, and he's been in it for a long time, as we said. We also joined by two Montana legislators. We're going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves and say a couple of words. We're going to have to. Oh, is Ted here as well? Okay, so we're going to have to do something with the feedback here. So I'm going to go ahead and start muting out microphones and see whose it is. Okay, Kirk, I think I just muted your microphone, Kirk, and it stopped. So you must be getting some feedback loop on your end. So let's start with you, Bob. If you could go ahead and let people know a little bit about yourself here, because this is the first time with this new audience. So if you could go ahead and say a couple words about yourself and let us know where you serve, in what district, and why you're here today.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Yes, I am Bob Phalen. I represent Dawson, Whittle counties, and Representative Jerry Schillinger and I, since we got back from the Cyber Symposium, have been putting on election integrity meetings. We've done 8 of them here in Eastern Montana, and we have got some good stuff coming, but I'm not at liberty to say anything at this point. And so anyway, that's about it. I farm and ranch with my son and my son-in-law. In fact, I had to skin a calf this morning to put a live calf on a cow. So that's about what I do. But I'm not doing election integrity and doing something else with the house.
Very good. Thanks, Bob. Brad Tschida, you've been on other previous broadcasts with us before. You are a Montana legislator as well. If you could just give us a brief background about yourself, we appreciate it. Thanks, Brad.
Well, thanks very much, Jim, for having us on. Brad Tschida, I currently serve as a representative in House District 97. I am running for a seat in Senate District 49, which is currently occupied by a very radical Democrat. That almost sounds like I'm being redundant, but I have termed out of the Montana House, and we didn't really have anybody that we thought was really ready to go ahead and make a run at a Senate seat because of the work that it takes. So I volunteered to go ahead and do that. I'm going to miss being in the House with guys like Bob Phalen and Jerry Schillinger, who are just really absolute rock stars. We are so blessed. The state is so blessed to have people like that, especially the farmers and ranchers and business people, educators from central and eastern Montana Kalispell area has some great folks. So does the Bozeman area, but there's pockets of liberalism that have really prevented us from getting work done, and that would be, essentially Helena, parts of Bozeman, but primarily Missoula, where I reside in the People's Republic of Missoula.
Yes, indeed. You described that very well. Thanks, Brad. Kirk, if you can, tell us the event you had over the weekend. Give us a general consensus about how things went, if you could, and what were some of the topics that were brought up there. That those are the things that we're, I'm sure, going to be discussing here, those and other things here today. What say you, Kirk? You're on mute. I muted you again. I think you had that feedback problem, so let me bring you off mute. There you go. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go right ahead.
Yeah, so Brad could even comment now that he of all the representatives actually showed up at the meeting as well, and I greatly appreciate that. And he is always, one of the things about success is that we have to have focus and priority, and you have to know what is important. And Brad has been able to show that, he has changed his schedule, and he's done so on short notice, and he's done that multiple times. Traveled great distances to get out to be where the action really is and follow that priority. So I appreciate that. From my perspective, I think the meeting went very well. The objective there was to get together a number of people from as many different counties across Montana as possible to educate on the issue of election integrity, put it within the framework of the broader picture of what's going on in the country and the world, and then to talk about some of the details and some of the remedies and some of the plans going forward. So we're kind of gathering the clan, if you will, because we're going to be making a big push here to basically make sure that the people have full participation in the process and that the process results in decisions that we like. Perhaps if you want to go ahead, Brad, and make some comments yourself, what you feel about that weekend.
Well, I was grateful that you invited me up, Kirk. The work that you're doing with the constitutional county is important. I think one of the things that came out of it was a greater understanding of the importance of having matters taken care of at the county level, because that's really the rudimentary place where governance can be influenced and affected. Obviously, cities or incorporated areas, same thing could happen. But I thought it went very, very well. One of the things that I'm looking forward to in the future, and hopefully it's something that can be synthesized a little bit, and that is to take this vast amount of knowledge that you possess, Kirk, on what we need to do to provide election security. And I'm referring to it that way rather than election integrity, because I think that a lot of the Democrats have co-opted that term and maybe made it a little bit passé. But if there are steps that the average person can take, maybe 5 or 6 steps that they can take that can really be effective at pushing the agenda that we need to push at the county level and have that carry over to the state level, I think that would be important. But there was an awful lot of good interaction, tremendous information that Kirk provided. I mean, he's so knowledgeable about it that all of us feel like we're in a graduate seminar listening to him talk about a variety of things, because he has such a depth of background knowledge from his work experience, and then plus the time he spent working on this. So I thought it was a tremendous use of time. I wasn't able to stay for the full complement. I had to leave about 15 or 20 minutes early to get back for a commitment I had in Missoula. But no, I thought it was a great event on Saturday.
If I can have you guys comment. Hey, Bob, good to see you. And Kirk, we have Ted is in the waiting room. Did you invite Ted to come on today? Do you remember doing that? Let me take you off mute. Go ahead, Kirk. Did you?
Ted who?
I don't know. Ted is it Vandalier? Is that how you say his last name? No. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll just go ahead and sorry, Ted. All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute your microphone, Kirk, because you got some serious feedback going on. If you see, I'm not sure if you fellows are aware that Nye County, Nevada, has come out and decided that they're not going to do the electronic voting. They are going to do paper ballots. I have contacts there in Nye County. I've interviewed several of the people down there many years ago. I'm not sure if they're still on the if they're same people there, the commissioners in Nye County. But do you have any thoughts about that, Bob? We'll go over to you first. What's your thoughts on Nye County stepping up? And I think they're the first county that I know of, certainly out west, maybe in the country, that has said that, we're not doing any more of the electronic stuff. We're going paper ballots.
Well, I think it's excellent, Jim, that they've done that. And I got to talk to Jim Marchant here a couple, 3 days ago for just a short period of time. And he said he's got 4 more counties lined up that they're going to make the presentation to. So anyway, I think it's excellent. I was really excited when I saw the interview with him that David Clements, or is it David Clements? I think Professor Clements anyway, that he did with Jim Marchant. But I think it's excellent. I think everybody ought to be doing the same thing.
Care to comment on that, Brad?
Yeah, I will, Jim. First of all, I think that's the only way to assure or ensure election integrity is to have paper ballots, have them hand counted. And if they want to use a machine as a backup, I think that's fine. I know that I spoke with someone from Richland County who said their county elections folks indicated, well, we have to use machines to speed up the process because there's so many ballots that we have to process in a short period of time. And their comment back to them was, before the machines, we had more people in Richland County who were voting, and we were hand counting, and it didn't seem to hold the process up. So everybody who wants this microwave McDonald's Happy Meal, instantaneous gratification kind of result, if we pare down the size of the precincts and have the ballots counted there, and then if they want to do a centralized count of them, that's fine. But we need to have chain of custody, and we need to have if we report from a precinct to a county, that county needs to report back to the precinct, here's what you gave us. And then when the county reports to the state needs to report that back. So we have, a continuous flow of information, but I think that information, or what they're doing down in Nye County, Nevada, is very, very important.
Indeed it is. Kirk, we're going to take a quick break here. Do you care to comment on that before we take a quick commercial break?
I think those are good points. My main question for when we come back from the break for both of you, Brad and Bob, is exactly how do you see this getting resolved? Is it going to be resolved at the legislative level, executive level, we the people? Tell me how that's going to work, and tell what kind of participation you see that's going to be involving the people itself.
Good stuff, folks. We're going to take a quick commercial break here. We are here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on all these networks, including Brighteon Radio. And we appreciate Mike Adams over there at Brighteon Radio hosting the show. We'll be back with Kirk MacKenzie, Bob Phalen, and Brad Tschida after these brief commercial messages here on Critical Disclosure Radio. Today's broadcast is sponsored by Heaven's Harvest Emergency Survival Food. Folks, as you can probably tell from watching the news, there's about to be a real big food shortage in this country. The trucker strike all across the world, especially here in the United States and Canada, is going to stop the food from flowing in here. There's no better time than right now to plant a garden for this spring. Spring is just around the corner, and you can save on shipping over at heavensharvest.com by going to heavensharvest.com and typing in Jim at checkout. Now, all you need to do is buy an heirloom seed vegetable kit or any food bucket and type in Jim at checkout, and you'll receive free shipping. Folks, don't wait. There's not much time left before the food supply is literally going to be shut down. We see this on the news every day. It's time to take your food security in your own hands. Do that by going to heavensharvest.com, picking up an heirloom vegetable seed kit, type in Jim at checkout. heavensharvest.com.
7K Metals is legacy. They help you leave a legacy for your family. Reasonable and affordable. Anyone can own gold and silver. It creates great generational wealth and residual passive income. No minimum or maximum order. 7K Metals has a Better Business Bureau A+ rating. It's about leaving a legacy for your family. It's about helping people. Now is the time to find out more information about protecting yourself. Call Carla at 406-855-20 2761. That's 406-855-2761. Today is a great time to buy gold and silver as a hedge against poor government decisions and potential economic collapse if history repeats itself. Take control of your financial future. Call Carla at 406-855-2761. 406-855-2761. Call now. 7K Metals and ask about your legacy.
PatriotPrepared.com carries the leading brands of storable food from Legacy and Heaven's Harvest. Patriot Prepared. Our name says it all. We're dedicated to empowering you to be self-reliant and confident in any circumstance. Whether you want to be prepared in the event of an emergency or you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, PatriotPrepared.com has prepackaged meals and kits for your entire family. Legacy, Heaven's Harvest are known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. Simple to prepare, easy to store, gluten-free and organic high-quality nutrition options with a 25-year shelf life. You can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. So go to PatriotPrepared.com right now to pick up your supply of high-quality storable food for your family, because it makes good sense to be prepared. That's PatriotPrepared.com.
Okay, folks, if you don't have storable food, it's not too late. We're still shipping out over at PatriotPrepared.com. Who knows how long that will last? We can't tell the future, but we do know that there could be some serious issues with food and that sort of thing coming up in the future. So to mitigate that risk, to get some storable food, some water filtration, that type of stuff, you can find everything you need over at PatriotPrepared.com. Okay, we're back here with the Election Integrity Roundtable. And what I'm going to do really is I'm just going to turn it over to Kirk here, Kirk, and let you go ahead and take this last segment out till we go to the next break. And go ahead and co-host the show. Let me go ahead and ask you to unmute that there.
Good. How's that better? Is that sound gone? I can change mics.
It is. It does sound better. Yep. And Brad, let me take you off mute.
Good.
Mute. Go ahead. Kirk, I'm just going to turn it over to you, my friend. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. By the way, that's Ted Valentine. He's on the line. He's the one that's waiting.
Do you want him in? Do you want him in?
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't know who was Ted.
Okay, very good. I'll have him in.
So let me address that question to Bob and Brad. This to me is a crux, is how the hell are we going to get this resolved? Because we got a legislator that seems to not be able to do anything about it. We have an executive not doing anything about it. We have a Secretary of State that's suspect. So how is that? What is the plan forward, and exactly what is the participation of we the people, instead of being, treated like mushrooms in the dark or something? How do we become engaged in an official, in an actual manner? I know the answer, but the question is more or less, how do you see the representatives inviting the participation of people in the process?
Well, if you
Bob, why don't you go ahead, Bob?
Yeah. Okay. Personally, I feel like you do, Kirk, that we are like mushrooms in the dark, because we, in my opinion, we cannot get any, a majority of our own party to help us. They are in denial. I'm assuming that's what the deal is anyway, because but I think that. I think eventually it's going to change. I don't know how we're going to fix it. I hope we don't have to wait till 23 to start passing bills. I better let Brad go, but because I that's about all the only wisdom I have, which is pretty limited. But
Brad.
Well, Bob sells himself a little bit short, because there's a lot more wisdom that comes out of his mouth than comes out of a lot of talking heads, no matter where we find them. We do have, we're in a state of denial right now in Montana. We believe that if there's a problem with corruption or fraud, it's everywhere else but here. And I was talking to Bob this morning, and I said, that's like saying human nature in Montana is different from everywhere else. And I as an example, I said to Bob, there's probably been no one who has had an affair in Dawson County. So, they don't know what the sinful behavior is over there. But, and Montana is different from every other state in that we don't have any, issues with election security or election fraud. Well, we're finding issues like that all the time, and we simply need to get people to admit that there is an issue going on. I was looking at a report this weekend that showed 9 different states: Georgia, Washington, Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and it showed the problems they had when they canvassed. And we can show all that information to legislators who refuse to acknowledge that we have problems. We can show it to the elections director, Dana Corson, who I believe is really the bottleneck in all of this. Because if there's a problem, then it looks bad for him. And the people who are running the elections, they're not the problem. They are good people. There's a lot of Republicans that are involved in it, but they simply do their job. But behind the scenes, things are happening to create problems. You can't look into machines. You can't get information back. So what I've synthesized this down to really is that there's a line from a song back in the 70s. I think Ray Stevens did it. And the line is, "There is none so blind as he who will not see." And so we bring information forward. People look at it and go, "Yeah, sorry, there's nothing there." Well, there is something there. And I think we need to push people on what the definition of fraud is, what the definition of systemic fraud is, and what the definition of widespread systemic fraud. We need to have people acknowledge that, because people will say, well, there is no fraud, but they won't define what that term is. And we have fraudulent practices that are going on. We know that. So we need to admit it. And that's the first step. And then we need to look at, how it's occurring and try to figure that out. But if we can't get the people at the state level to do it, then it's really up to the individual citizens and the people, in Kirk's program at the county level to really push these things and make it happen. And Kirk's program is designed to do that. So I'll turn it back over to him.
So I think that a lot of people are of the opinion, that they're, we sit there and watch, and I think it was what you, Brad, and both of you, and Senator Manzilla, got, what is it, 86 or 68 or 86 people who wanted to go ahead and investigate this, and somehow that got thwarted. A lot of excuses. We can't come up with $50,000. We don't have the power to do this. We're in the middle of a communist revolution, and we have a quote, conservative government that's doing absolutely nothing. And the question, where the hell is the bottleneck? Is it basically the individuals at the top of the party? Is it the governor? Is it the Secretary of State? Something's problem here. Are we just taking so much money from the federal government that nobody wants to challenge it? People have to know that 50% of the state budget in Montana comes from the federal government. Is it basically just, a division of the federal government now rather than being an independent state? Exactly where is this going to happen? And the other thing I would say is that I know that there was a move to put together, quote, a special panel, a new one to resolve the problem, consisting of a couple of Republicans, a couple of Democrats, and an independent.
I think that was 3 Democrats. That was 3 Democrats and a Republican.
Okay, so basically we know that the opinions of those people are already on the table, but it's quite interesting that including in that attendance is going to be, guess what? The Secretary of State, her second in hand, and ES&S. Now, the reality is, I think most of us people would think that they're supposed to be the target of the investigation, not on the panel. So that panel's dead on arrival. It's not going to get off the ground. There's maybe an impression that it will, but it will not be considered. We understand that. I'd like to have Ted come on in here. Ted's a big supporter, and with the Flathead Liberty Coalition. And perhaps he could comment as well, Ted.
Go ahead and unmute there, Ted. I should have sent
Good morning.
There you go.
Good morning.
Yeah. Morning.
Good morning, guys. I just saw something. I read it this morning, and I think it's so germane to this discussion. As you know, when we went before the county commissioners to object to the purchase of new ES&S machines, I guess if I look back on it in retrospect, it was kind of appeared to me that they acquiesced relatively easily on the equipment purchase. But I think that I have looked at something this morning that may tell me why, and this is really a cause for concern. It's I'm looking. It was published in the Phalen newspaper, and it refers to a new election system in 2023 called ElectMT system, scheduled to be implemented on the 2023. However, a guy named Stephen Fuller, who is the state elections manager, I've never heard his, or Stuart Fuller, who's the state elections manager, never heard before, said they're going to bring it out for this upcoming primary. I think it's in 15 counties here in Montana to run it in parallel with the other system. Now, have we been hoodwinked that we have some other system that may or may not involve new hardware that I have heard nothing about until this morning? And is that why our Flathead County commissioners acquiesced relatively easily on this issue? You know, we've done so much. There is so much information out there. And, you know, basically, my feeling is with the legislators, that it's just, oh, yeah. And I've had some of them flat out tell me, oh, yeah, there's fraud. And that's as far as it goes. This is a fundamental issue for the future of our country. And I guess I'm just absolutely astonished the degree of pushback that we're getting from the folks that we would like to think are on our side.
I think we're kind of stunned by that. The people are stunned by what's going on here, I think, and watching our country disappear. And then the arrogance of a minister shuts us down and doesn't want to let us have a real meaningful engagement. That's not acceptable. I wonder if would it be of interest, Jim, maybe just to take a couple minutes real quickly for the audience that may not understand what we're talking about, to go through a couple of those diagrams, so that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. We've got a
just
break.
Real quick.
We've got a network break. We've got a network break coming up here that we can't avoid coming up here in about 3 minutes. So maybe we can can we come back from the break? That way we can spend the adequate amount of time on those graphs. Is that okay?
Why don't we get ahead? Yeah, okay, that's fine. And then maybe in the meantime, what we could go ahead and do is, I mean, you know, the nice thing about Bob and Brad, I think they're really with the people here, and they want to work with the people. And there is, what's stunning to me is that we have representatives that are being told they can't get, you know, FOIA responses. I mean, this is a big shutdown. I mean, it has every element of a cover-up. I mean, I hate to say that, but, you know, you couldn't do a better job than what they're doing here, you know, even locking out representatives. So you want to comment on that at all, Bob?
I do. Yeah, I put in a FOIA request and I got turned down. During the break, what I'll do is I'll go down and see if I can find the letter. I got it anyway. And so, yeah, I was turned down. I've been turned down 3 times. The first time I wanted a forensic image of the machine, and I end up getting turned down. And then I wanted images. I got turned down, and I did a FOIA request on who voted as of November 3rd, 2020, and I got turned down because it was too hard to produce those names. So, in Weebo County,
well, I just want to say that. Go ahead, Bob.
In Weebo County, I did get a hard copy of everybody that voted. So, go ahead.
Yeah, let me get the top bit, Ted, before you go. Let me get Brad. Do you want to say anything about this, Brad?
Well, I've made a number of requests like Bob did. I asked for information on people who voted on November 3rd, 2020. I asked for it as of November 4th, and they gave me a list of certified voters who had voted in the primary election, because they said there were some who they had not certified for the November general election. So they sent me a list that did not meet the requirement that I asked for. They refused to refund the $1,000 that I paid, and they refused to give me an updated list. Then I asked for a list of the 47,000 people that were removed from the voter rolls by the counties and sent to the state for to be cleared off of their list, because they keep the master list. They don't do the purging. It's done by the counties, and they just take care of it there. And I was told that it would take too long to do that, and it would be a special request. And I'm basically being stonewalled by the legal staff at the Secretary of State's office. And again, I believe that it's at the behest of the election director. So I have to put together a response that essentially says, if you know the 47,000 people that were taken from that list, produce that list. That's all I need, because then we can use that in our canvassing efforts to go back and say, did these people vote or did they not vote? But we're being stonewalled by the very executive branch office, Secretary of State's office, that should be working with us. And I've been trying to,
Fellas, Brad,
work
hold that
in
thought.
harmony with them.
We're coming up on a hard break. We just got to go to a hard break and network break. We'll be back after these brief messages here on Critical Disclosure Radio, criticaldisclosure.com, criticaldisclosure.com.
Jim, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm going to go through those files there that I sent you.
Okay.
And I'll start with number, I think they have the, they call it figure 1 or figure 2, 3, 4, that type of thing.
Got them ready to go.
Where did you send it to? Okay.
We're going to be starting with Jim number 1. It's called a figure 2, the simplified view.
Got it.
Can the other guys hear me right now?
Yeah, so can everybody. So can everybody else. By the way, just so you know.
I would just like to thank Brad and Bob for their continuing support and commitment in this effort. You know, it's we like to think that these are the people that are working for us and that are listening to us, and I appreciate Bob and Brad's continued commitment trying to work with us and work through this.
Yeah, and we continue to be joined by people like Teresa Manzella, Steve Galloway, Jerry Schoen, there's Paul Fielder. So, yeah, there's a group that are heavily involved in this, and we're part of that. But those guys do every bit as much as we do. They may not be on the air, on the radio as much, but they are doing tireless work behind the scenes.
Well, I appreciate that.
One minute. Okay, welcome back to the broadcast. I'm your host, James White, and co-hosted by Kirk MacKenzie today. This is Critical Disclosure Radio, hosted by Brighteon Radio. We are here Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, 10 to 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We're on Rumble, Podbean, Brighteon Radio, Facebook, Twitch, and I think I forgot something else too, Foxhole. We're on that as well. So check us all out. If you just find all the links over at libertylinks.io/Jim's Links. libertylinks.io/Jim's Links. And we are joined here today by several Montana legislators, Kirk MacKenzie, and the crew here. This is a roundtable on voter integrity, and we're going to turn it back over to you, Kirk, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up those documents if you're ready for those.
I am. So let's go ahead. For those may not be familiar with the audience, just real quick, we'll go through it real fast. Some of the concerns that we have on these machines. So if you would, figure 2.
On it. Go ahead.
Okay, so just real simple terms, this is a very simplistic view, is you have essentially the county personnel that are taking paper ballots, they stick them into these machines, which are basically big scanners. They rip them through the machine and they come back out again into an out tray. And that's pretty much what the county does. Then the count itself goes into this ES&S equipment, and there's several pieces of that equipment, but for the moment, just think of them as all one big chunk. And the problem here is it's completely secret. They won't let you look inside the machines. We don't know what's going on inside of them. They're not able to take a look at the software. And in fact, they don't even tell us what the ballots, the electronic ballots are and how they've been counting them. All they do is they spit out at the end and they say, well, here's who won. There's no detail, no breakdown showing you how to got to that number. Now, if they could, Jim, number figure 3, then the next one, the kind of a slightly expanded view. Is that on the screen now?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a little bit more detail. You have what's called a tabulator on the left-hand side, and it has you put in one paper tray, and then out comes 3 different categories, depending upon whether or not it's good or it needs to be adjudicated and so forth. They have a printer there that's actually printing out a lot of computer paper as it goes, but it's not actually printing out the information you really need to know. It's printing out the interactions of operators and so forth with the machines. Then that information comes out of there, is encrypted, and it goes into a USB thumb drive. They call it a memory stick. And they walk that over into, quote, the hardened computer, which is basically a Microsoft Windows computer running Windows. And there's an analysis done. We don't know exactly what's going on because, again, we can't see the software. It should be simple, 1 + 1 = 2, but we know a lot more is going on than that. And then out of that comes an unencrypted results, which they put in the stick 2, and they put it into, walk it over to a standard office computer where it's communicated to the internet. That's the sequence. Now, if you would on figure 4, Jim, let me know when it's up.
Go ahead.
So kind of the logical flow then, if we take a look at this flow through all this equipment, is you have the paper ballots, they go and they get scanned. The scan turns into a picture, like you would a photograph. That photograph, then there's software that looks at it and does optical character recognition, just like you would do with a document where it's recognizing text. Here, it's all it has to recognize is, do you have a dot or don't you have it? It's not particularly complicated. But that software then turns that image into data, 1s and 0s. And for each paper ballot, then it creates the equivalent of that ballot in an electronic form, and 1s and 0s that the computer can actually do something with. I call that the e-ballot. And then that e-ballot information then goes off into some software, then theoretically counts this and comes out and spits out totals. Now, the big issue is whether or not those ballots are in fact being counted, or in fact what's happening is the results that are being presented are results of a computer calculation that's guaranteed to produce an intended outcome. And then finally here in the next final figure here, Jim, figure 5. What makes us a big concern is there's more than satisfactory evidence that there's real problems in that. We can tell that mathematically with high degree of statistical significance. I mean, nearly 100% certain that this is going, some games are happening here. And when you say, well, let's go look into it, what you find out is over here is you can't look inside the tabulator, you can't look at the software. And by the way, the hard disk drive that they had in that machine, they've since destroyed. They've wiped it. They did a software upgrade, and before they did that, we raised hell because we realized that would wipe out the record. Well, they went ahead and did it. And they did it even when we gave them a logical choice of, well, why don't you just remove the disks that you have in the machine, set that aside, just save that, put it in a new disk, it cost you $100. Well, the answer was, well, we can't do that because we can't get in the machine. We can only let ES&S do it. We say, well, fine, call up ES&S, tell them to do it. They wouldn't do it. Then this thumb drive, both of these thumb drives, we talked to them and they said, well, gee, what do you do with those? Well, we just overwrite them and reuse them at the next election, which they just did. So those have been wiped as well. And of course, the hard disk drives and so forth that have been in the computer, the hardened computer, they've been wiped. So what we have here is absolutely an inability where we discovered not only can we not verify the totals that they report, but neither can the county. And they don't even care. They've never even asked to see this individual personalized data. So as a result, there's an outcome where we realize the county is just rubber stamping a number that is being produced by the machines, which is totally under control of ES&S, which is a foreign corporation. So in effect, the county has contracted out its job, the key part of its job, to a foreign corporation, and then said, by the way, none of the rules of transparency and FOIAs and process and all that applies to government. No, it doesn't apply to the corporate world. So you can't get all that information. And so that's, I think, the basis of some of the concerns, and there's a far more of them on that. One thing I wanted, before we get back, I want to mention this question I wanted to ask. You were saying that you had to pay $1,000. Rob, is that what you were saying, to get some of this data?
That was Brad.
Brad, did you say that?
It was not for FOIA requests. It was for a request for a list of the folks who voted in the November 3rd, 2020 election. I asked for the data as of the 4th, and I wanted to know who voted. And they said, well, we'll give you, what they gave us was not what was requested. And the only certification we had was that it was of people who had been certified after the primary in that same year. And I said my request was pristine, but for that data that you can't use for commercial purposes, they charged $1,000. And then when I got the erroneous data, they said, well, we'll go ahead and give you what you're asking for, but it's going to cost you another $1,000.
Well, I can tell you this, that right now that I've paid over, I think it's like $1,500 at this point, $1,500 for my FOIA request. And you find that you pay the taxes and you think government works for you. Then you come around and you say, I want transparency. They say, fine, here it is. Here's the bill for transparency. It's just absurd to charge the people, but to actually charge the representatives or to not do it at all is serious problems. Ted, do you want to weigh in?
I certainly do. The procedure that you've just gone through, Kirk, becomes even more ludicrous when we realize that the machines that we're using in the majority of Montana counties, from ES&S, they have tested one machine in Helena, and they've said this machine is good to go. It's certified. By default, they pass that certification on to every other ES&S machine that's being used in Montana. So one machine has been determined to accurately reflect our vote across the majority of counties in Montana by a private corporation, by a company that won't let us see what's going on. Their constant comeback is, well, that's proprietary. We have what's known as a non-disclosure agreement. We could get competent computer people to look inside those machines under a non-disclosure agreement, so they won't disclose proprietary computer information, and confirm whether or not they have ability to communicate outside. And once that's done, we could have the insurance. If we're going to use the machines, we could have the insurance that we can move ahead. But nobody's willing to consider these simple steps for transparency.
Well, how do you think that would work at the airport if they just inspected one plane and said, okay, well, they're all fine. We inspected one and it looks good. All the other planes are fine, because that's what it's like.
Yeah. Let's inspect one bag at the airport in security. Let's just inspect one bag, then everybody else is good to go.
There you go.
A simple analogy that I like to use is if I went to Costco and loaded up my cart and I ran it through the register, and I get outside the other end and all they handed me was a number and they say, you owe us $300. Nobody would accept that. On something as simple as going to Costco, you want to see what you bought and how much it cost. We don't have that for our voting. And aren't our voting rights more significant than a trip through Costco?
Yeah.
Well, it depends upon the samples that day, I think.
So if anybody in the audience hasn't been involved in the election issues up till now, I think what you're hearing is that there's really some deep issues and problems here with the process, but the government response on both sides. It's both Democrat and Republican parties. Somewhere at the top of the leadership, either they have, in my opinion, either corruption there or they're taking top-down directions from the federal government The other thing that came out in this, and this maybe I would like to have you guys weigh in. It was for me as I went through this process. There's one stunning revelation after another, and one of them was that the federal government apparently has declared the entire election system across the country as critical infrastructure, and therefore we now find that the quote deep state, if you will, the FBI and the others are in charge of the election system, the machines, and the choice of the hardware and the software. And in other words, the federal government, to a great extent, appears to me, is in charge, which is against the Constitution. And I suspect that the ES&S representatives are actually just kind of servants to them. And that's one of the pieces of the pie that I didn't mention to people is during the election, we found out that the ES&S representatives stand by every hour, every machine at every election. They're standing guard. And that so much reminds me of what is that they called them in communist Russia when they had the commissars or whatever, they were always had their people that were spying on everybody else. It just, where the hell did that come into the equation? And why aren't the states fighting back? Bob, Brad, either one of you?
Well, because they started this long time ago. That's one of the reasons. And the people just had kind of, in my opinion, at least 2000 when Gore and Bush, when they passed the HAVA Act, and I don't know. But anyway, that's why I think the people just have been lulled to sleep, in my opinion. And so, and they think what our government is doing is on the up and up. I have no other explanation. I did want to say though that my clerk here the other day told us, Senator Steve Heimbaugh and me, that there is no modems in the machine, and I think that is probably an incorrect statement, to say the least.
Yeah, basically the question is, this whole thing, if this were innocent, right? 30 minutes and a screwdriver.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the big deal about opening up a box? I come from Intel, I come from the computer industry. I've been involved in this for a long time. There's nothing proprietary you see inside there. When you open them up, you see a bunch of gray pieces of plastics that most people don't understand, but those microprocessor chips and so forth, and I do understand, but there's nothing proprietary you learn by seeing it. So the only thing they could possibly be hiding is there's something in there that they don't want us to see. Some chip, or something of that nature. And so, but they're basically acting like guilty people. This isn't the act of innocent people. If you're innocent people, you say, sure, come on in, we'll take a look, we'll open it up, there's nothing to see. Brad?
Yeah, I agree. What we have done over the last, and I think it's been a lot longer. I think we've seen the influence for probably 100 years of the federal government incrementally taking more and more power from people, and that 1 degree of change every year results in a 180 degree turn. So the general population is anesthetized to the actions of the federal, state, and local governments. And we believe that they will take care of things, that they are honest people. And by and large, they are honest people. Yeah. But the bottom line is it only takes one corrupt person in the right position of power or access to undermine things. If you go back to what happened in Wisconsin, where one of the operatives who was involved was basically running the election for Wisconsin, and he was essentially on the payroll of Zuckerberg's money. And he was the one that was asking for access and information, and they gave him tons of access, where if the average citizen would have gone in, they would have said, no, you can't see that. So we basically abdicated our responsibility as citizens to the government, expecting that they would do the right thing. Well, they're not doing the right thing. And we have to take that back. And the fight to take it back is going to be much more difficult and much more painful than the process of giving it up.
One question I don't think either of you kind of answered the way that I was trying to get out. I think you kind of gave me an answer. I'd like to have an answer. This is not normal times. At the county level, this is not just about passing zoning laws, and to have the people who were comfortable passing zoning laws. Doesn't necessarily mean it's their role, or we're comfortable with them trying to make decisions about the future of mankind. the future of our country. And my question that I'd like you to address directly is exactly how do you envision the participation of the people getting involved in the process and be included at the table?
I personally think that like you and your group, you are involved. And that was one of the reasons that and Jerry and I did what we done is to try to inform the people and to get them involved. But nobody has done anything, and they keep asking us, well, what are you going to do? When are we going to see some results? And so I don't know how to answer that. And so
let me ask maybe this question.
Okay.
If, for example, we go ahead and go against their bonds.
Go against what?
Their bonds. Would you come in and support?
If Absolutely. I didn't quite understand what you said. Go against what?
The bonds. In other words, you go after the individuals that are causing the problems and you say you're not doing your job and you're doing all these things that are wrong. And by the way, you have a bond that says you're supposed to do your job, right?
Well, sure I would.
Brad?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the processes that has been utilized in other states and in other venues, and it's something that we need to do in Montana. And I believe there have been some Montanans who have already filed a process against the bond for an elected official and have said, you're not doing your job, so we're going to implement this action against your bond so that we can have some sort of recourse, because they're not listening to the average citizen. The average citizen is speaking up and saying, here's what I want from you, here's what I expect from you, and they're not getting it. So now they're going, okay, well, the way to fight this is to go after the bonds of whether it's the sheriff, the county commissioner, or anyone else who is bonded in their legal duties or in their executive duties, and activate that process. And we need to do that. We need to do that on an ongoing basis, because there's a significant cost to them for every one of those requests for a bond, if I understand correctly, Kirk.
So we had the insurance policies, and it turns out there's a $100,000 deductible, which means that that's money that the individual would have to come up with, in theory, per claim. And right now I have more than 240 signed affidavits about this on election integrity, and these claims are individuals. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of claims that's on the table here. Do you believe, okay, so the both of you would be on support. What about, was it 68 or was it 86 that was with the Teresa Benzella with your group?
Let me pause you guys. Let me pause you guys for 1 second. Program note: we have 4 minutes left in the show before we have to bail for the network.
So I'd like to have this really understood. Do you think we can get the 86 involved, and how can we do that?
Well, if you were asking me, I would say I would hope so. But we're trying to get a special session. I don't know if you know that or not. And I mean, it sounds like there's some negative stuff going on there. I mean, we'll know in a month whether or not we're going to get the special session. So I would hope that those 86 would come back on, but we can't even get our own leadership people to go with us. I don't know. That really frustrates me.
So the question is, how many of those 86 can we get on involved? As a parallel activity, it seems to me to make sense that we should be able to move forward on both fronts and see which one actually succeeds, and that we should have a declaration of support for our efforts to go against the bonds by, hopefully all 86, but we should figure out who's on board. Yeah, have that known on the public record before we go into elections. And that's one final word I want to say real quick, and then I'll turn it over. We absolutely have to have hand count here on this next election here, this midterm, and nothing, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We stop it now.
Yeah, I know. What do you do if you don't have anybody on board? I mean, that's what we have been pushing for, and that's why one of the reasons originally we wanted a special session. But the special session that we're after right now does not address any bills, so we couldn't bring any bills if we wanted to, as I understand it. I'm just a freshman here, so.
2 minutes. If you guys want to give out websites or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that is correct. Bob is correct. If we have a special session for election security, it would be just to seat a special select committee to look into that. But I think if I understand your question correctly, Kirk, you're talking about could we get 86 people to sign on to having us proceed against these elected officials and to file claims against their bonds so that $100,000 per on a deductible would have to be paid. I'm doubtful. And the reason I'm doubtful is that I'm a realist. And as much as my heart would like to think that especially the Republicans would do the right thing, I don't believe we're going to see them do the right thing, whether it's out of fear or ignorance, a combination of those things. I just have this feeling that they're not going to do it. And part of it is that the Montana Association of Counties has set up a committee that's supposedly looking into election integrity, election security, and they really have one person who's open-minded about it. There's two other Republicans that have already voiced their disapproval and 3 Democrats. And one of the Republicans is Dave Beatty out of Hamilton, who essentially said there is no fraud, but I'll go ahead and participate as part of this committee. And then we'll let you go ahead and take that as proof that we're doing something about election integrity. That job is the job of the state legislature in Article 4, Section 3 of the Montana Constitution. It does not involve the Montana Association of Counties. And so this is just a facade to give cover to those people who aren't going to sign on to a special session or to anything else that's going to really take a hard and honest look at election security.
We're just out of time, guys. We only got about 25 seconds left. CriticalDisclosure.com, CriticalDisclosure.com, TheConstitutionalCounty.com. You can find this video on all those platforms. If you go to libertylinks.io/Jim's Links, you'll be able to find this video. I want to thank all of the guests today. Thanks, Kirk, for the co-hosting. Sorry, we're just out of time, folks. We got to go for the network. And we'll talk to you next time here on Critical Disclosure Radio. Until then, this is Jim White saying bye now.
Good job.
Thank you. God bless. Thanks, Jim.